Caroline Oceana Ryan, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Very, very happy to have you on. I loved what I heard from you with all those videos that I saw on the Higher Self YouTube channel, which were happy enough and decent enough to upload videos that you have done often. They think that your information is worthy enough to be on that channel, so that's definitely something you should be very proud of. Anybody whose information is on the Higher Self YouTube channel is definitely worthy of being on my show and definitely worthy of having their info heard by everybody. So yeah, that's where I heard about you, the Higher Self YouTube channel. Love what I heard from you, and I like what I see on your site. Definitely gonna make for some interesting stuff. But before then, why don't you tell us your life story from a primary source perspective? What did you experience that causes you to do the far out stuff that you do that's not mainstream, to say the least?
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's really nice to be here, and hello to everyone. And I guess, I came in this life. I believe we all live many earth lives. I've lived about 500 that I know of, at least 400 at any rate. And I guess I came in this time as my last go around in the third dimension, which is, excuse me, true for many people. At this point on Earth's timeline, we are getting ready to move to higher dimensional levels. We've been stuck on the third dimensional level, as most of you would already know about, for a very long time. And there's higher light data pouring into the Earth. So if you came forward at this time, it's mainly to clear up old trauma, old belief systems, old soul fragmentation, things you have suffered in the past that are still with you on a soul level, so that even when you leave this earth, when you're done with this body in this earth life you're in now, assuming you leave via physical death, you look at the state of your soul and you realize, well, I've got a lot of healing to do. Well, we came in this life, and I'm no exception, to rid ourselves of the energy intrusions, the entity interferences that come in every time we're in a physical body. They just come back in. They come in during times of extreme vulnerability, illness, unconsciousness, depression, rage, grief, etc. And when we go up in the higher realms, because we're done with a particular earth life, of course they don't follow us because they can't stand the light. They can't stand all of that beautiful higher vibration. Likewise, the trauma, well, that tends to leave us. We're healed, we're fine. You come back into a physical body, you re-experience all that, all right? All of the past life trauma, everything that's any interfered with you, if it wasn't chased out into the light, it's going to come back in. And I believe I came in this time, as most of us did, to really clear a lot and to heal a lot, and also to assist in what the earth is going through right now, which is nothing less than ascending from the third to the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension being symbolic of time. And time is collapsing on this planet. You've probably noticed an hour passes a lot faster than it ever used to. So I was born into a very conservative family. My father was a Baptist minister, and my mother was just sort of a wonderful businesswoman, but grew up, in an era when women just looked to marry a guy with money and have 3 or 4 children. And she did. She had 4 kids, and I was the second after her first daughter. And had a really lovely, easygoing sort of life growing up in Maine. When I was 12, we moved to a little town in Pennsylvania, and I won't bore you with every detail of my life, but that was a huge shift for me, because we went from living in a beautiful New England town, the Augusta, the capital of Maine, to a very rough, tiny little farming community in South Central Pennsylvania, a few hours west of Philadelphia. And I never fully adjusted to that. And it meant that I had to go inward. I had to pray a lot. And I had to face the fact that the Christianity I had been taught was not efficacious in dealing with personal problems, because it always came back to, if you weren't so sinful, if you would just stay happy because Jesus loves you, this wouldn't be a problem. Now, maybe other people have experienced other forms of teachings in their churches, and that's great. But what I was taught was, you're intrinsically bad, you're low, you don't deserve to be loved by God, but God, luckily, God is always a man, a white male, Luckily, he does love you, so try to snap out of it and admit how bad you are and pray for strength. And I get that I had that sort of right-wing evangelical outlook. Meanwhile, starting when I was really small, I think probably I could see angels when I was little, but I would talk to them when I was a little girl. I would talk to my higher self. I didn't know who she was. It's just an image in my mind of a woman who's maybe about 30, very wise. She would speak to me in comforting ways, which was a help. Once I had twin brothers born when I was 7. Nobody had any time for me anymore. My father had an explosive temper, and every time he yelled or threw things or got out of control, I thought it felt like God was angry at me because he was a clergy member. And my mother was kind of afraid of him, you know. And so I grew up in this really kind of dysfunctional family. But by the time I was 12 to 17 and a half, I had a severe biochemical imbalance called Wilson's disease, which is a huge collection of copper in two of the your main organs, brain, kidney, or liver, and I had it in liver and brain. Luckily, my mother, almost by accident, took me to the right doctor, who treated me with vitamin therapy when I was 17 and a half. And I was able to come out of it, but he said it was the worst case he'd ever seen. And I just lived in this horrible, incredibly dark depression and anxiety for those 5.5 years of my teenage time. And I didn't think I'd make it out. I really didn't. And I just depended on the kind of spiritual belief, though I linked it to literature and music. I looked at the metaphors in literature and music. I played classical piano for many, many years. And I used that to survive. And I used talking to Jesus, who I more properly refer to as correct name, Yeshua now, talking to him in ways that the church doesn't teach, which is that he's a friend, in the sense of he's not going to judge you ever. There's no divinity that judges you. We judge ourselves. And I began to grasp that. And it was like a door opening at a great distance and light coming out of it when I was just covered in this incredible inky darkness. And I started to move toward that. And by my late 20s, writers like Louise Hay were coming out with books like You Can Heal Your Life. And she has this great phrase. At that point, I had dropped evangelicalism. I went to actually a very great, amazing seminary to study education, intercultural education, which is peace education, because I was an activist in my teens, 20s, and still am one, peace activist. And I went to Union Theological Seminary when I was living in New York City I lived there for about 7 years and got a master's degree. And that's a very open place, you know. It's interfaith now. It was mainly Christian then. It's interfaith now, which I'm very glad of. But by that time, I had just dropped the evangelical dogma. And I said, either I'm going to know God in a real way, an authentic way, or not at all. And over time, I stopped using the word God because there's a huge matrix around it. And had kind of moved away from this ability or this, well, the enjoyment of talking to angels or talking to fairy folk or higher beings. Elementals do exist, nature spirits do exist, for those who are rolling their eyes right now. But I read Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, and she has this wonderful sentence in it where she says, if your religion tells you you're a sinner and a lowly worm, get another one. And I loved it, and it was so freeing because my father had been so abusive. My relationships, a lot of my jobs, and almost all my relationships with men, not friendships, but the ones I would fall for, were abusive. And I was living with a very abusive narcissist at the time, and thankfully got away from him over time and set up my life again independently and didn't marry him. I'm very, very thankful for that. But you know, things just opened up from there, Andrew, I would say. I started listening to Oren and DeBenz for the Luminescence productions, their recordings, their MP3s, their guided meditations by the early mid-90s. I found I was so drawn to the whole idea of channeling, the whole idea of receiving higher wisdom and knowledge and understanding and comfort and healing straight from the source. We don't need a middleman, a middlewoman. We don't need any of that. You go straight to the source yourself. And I began to realize this is going to be our true salvation, our true point of sovereignty on this planet. If we can stop making someone else our savior or our expert or our excuse, our rationale for behaving a certain way and justifying those means, even if they're violent ones. And so by the mid 90s, by 94, I was thinking, I wouldn't have called it channeling exactly, but I thought I used to get answers when I had a question. So I would write out a question. What's going on that I feel to be drowning financially, even though I'm earning okay? Or what's going on with this in my life? Relationships that I don't draw in the right kind of men. They're users, or they're just, they're cool or whatever. And then I would just let the answer flow through. And it was revelatory. It was full of light, although I wouldn't have called it that at the time. And as I went on, it's a long story. I'm not going to give you the full story of my life. I don't want to bore people, but year after year, I've come further into my authentic self. And by 2014, by that time, I had returned to where I went to college and where I used to live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I thought, wow, I see all this channeling on online. Why don't I start doing that? And within a day, in my mind's eye, I could see this beautiful group of ETs. They looked human, but very beautiful. All of them maybe around 28, age 28, 30 years. Obvious they didn't age. Very calm, very beautiful beings. And they said, we have messages we would like to give to you for light workers. Could you please take them down and share them? And I hadn't figured out yet who I was going to ask to channel from, whether an archangel or anybody else. And this group came through, and I said, yes, all right. And they became, in time, I realized, and through a wonderful channeler, a friend of mine, um, this was angels, archangels, friendly galactic beings, benevolent galactics, nature spirits, earth elementals like wind and fire and the earth and air. And this was a lot, maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands or more of higher beings who I asked them, do you have a name? And they just said, the collective, for we speak as one. And I like that idea of oneness. So I started channeling exactly 6 years ago in March of 2014. And that's where Message to Lightworkers came through. And I actually don't make those videos that other people share on YouTube that you referred to on the Higher Self channel. They make them with a computer. I make my own videos, which are live channelings, which are just me sitting on the floor in my apartment and bringing through the collective to speak on different issues. I'm going to make one pretty soon to help people deal with stress. We just had a group call. I've got maybe 7,000 people who follow me as subscribers through my website, which is CarolineOceanaRyan.com. And people sign up there and they get the weekly Message to Lightworkers and other free content. And we just had a free group call. So the collective could talk to us about what's going on with this virus. And that's just how it's gone. I do individual channeling sessions, and I was very shy about doing those at first, but you just kind of grow into it. And I had my own radio show for a while, and I put out a lot of books by the collective, and they're on Amazon. If you just Google my name, you'll see, or do a search on Amazon for my name, they'll come up. And yeah, it's been quite a wild ride, but as bizarre as some of it sounds, I feel to have come into my authentic self. So thank you for asking, and I'm sorry if that was over long.
Oh, no. It's perfect to spend as long as you need on a life story. That may be the most important thing in some interviews, because well, never underestimate the significance of a primary source. So as far as your website goes, CarolineOceanaRyan.com, although at the top it says Ascension Times. Lovely,
Yeah.
catchy name for a title. Although you are familiar with the ascension deception idea that people are taking this ascension thing too far to suggest that we'll all transform into crystalline beings, but that's not what we're designed to really do. It's a different kind of ascension that has nothing to do with turning into entities that can fart rainbows and burp butterflies. It's not like that. So the
Well,
ascension that you're talking about, how does it work?
well, you're right that if we're going to become crystalline beings, that's not going to happen overnight. That would take quite a lot of inner development. What's happening is that our cells are going from being carbon based to crystalline based, but it doesn't mean that we're going to become like turn into pure light, within a couple of years. So I agree that people are kind of taking it to an extreme and assuming or hoping that things happen really fast. When in fact the collective are reminding me right now, if that were to happen, our circuits would be blown if we were to jump to this incredibly high vibration where we were just these beautiful crystalline beings that you could almost sort of see through and we were pure light. We would explode. It would just be too much to take on at once. Maybe some of us will make it to that, but there are many steps along the way. They're saying many growth processes, and we have lived in this dense earth for so long and picked up so much pain, so much trauma and shock over many Earth lives, plus what we've suffered on other planets. There are wars on other planets as well. There's, excuse me, trauma and abuse and starvation in other places. In this universe, uh, from what I understand, there's maybe 3 planets, including ours, that are 3 dimensional. And we're a pretty crazy example of the third dimension because the level of chaos and madness on the earth, and you don't overcome that in the blink of an eye. So you and I may be on the earth when that happens. We may choose to move on. But yeah, it's not going to be all sunshine and butterflies, no, because we have a lot to take account for. We have to learn how to focus our minds. We've got to detach from the many matrices that we have been stuck in for eons. We've got to revitalize and recapture our authentic selves. It's not something that's going to occur anywhere near so quickly as what you and I could envision. And it will happen in the sense that slowly enough for our health and peace of mind that we won't look that different probably to begin with, except that we won't age so quickly. We won't become ill. Injuries will heal faster if they occur at all. Illness, ongoing chronic conditions will heal. And the kind of stress we're feeling right now with the world situation, the world situation will have shifted and we will be sovereign beings. But even that's going to take a while to get used to. So those who are assisting us, whether they're friendly ETs or galactic, higher beings, higher vibrational beings, they're going to be working with us as guides and mentors. And it's just going to take a while to evolve. So what we're talking about is a slower process of evolvement than what a lot of people allude to when they talk about ascension. So I see what you mean. I feel we can make it to crystalline, but don't expect that to happen within a year. It would be a shock.
Yeah, it's gonna take time. So, another thing that's gonna take a little bit of time to straighten out. You did mention in passing the coronavirus thing. Before I give you the chance to say the things you wanted to say about it, there was a video that David Wilcock uploaded to his channel last night, very late. So, had to zonk out at bed before I could even start watching it when it was even live at that time. And
Yeah.
he was it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long now. I think I'm going to watch the whole thing. It's worth it, I think, because from 35 minutes in already, I'm into, and he's hinting that the coronavirus thing is being used in many ways as a cover story for what's going to be happening afterwards. But before I get into that, he did assert in the video that there really is no need to be quarantining to the extent that we are in society now. He talked about how in China they're up to like 95% working again. So the place where it started and the place where it was supposed to be the worst of all around the world seems to be getting back to normal and
Yeah.
no more cases. So why are we quarantining ourselves? Well, I can only imagine what's going to be in the next 2 hours and 10 minutes that I haven't seen yet. Looking forward to watching it when I'm done interviewing you. But the idea that this could be to cover up something else, and well, all right, I'm not going to say any further. What do you have to say about that and the things you want to say about the coronavirus, and then I'll go from there.
Okay, well, I'll touch briefly, first of all, on David Wilcock's YouTube, which I haven't seen yet. A friend of mine who's a Faction 3 White Knight under the Ashtar Command, the only one, in fact, who didn't have to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding NESARA law. And he's able to talk about it openly on his radio programs, but he and his wife. But he saw it, and he said that it is so that mass arrests are taking place. Did he mention that? I think he mentioned that. Um,
Well, I've heard that in some other videos that I've seen on the idea, but this I haven't heard David say that yet. Remember, I'm only 35 minutes into that video that
oh, okay.
he uploaded last night. That's two
Okay,
hours
sure.
40 minutes long or so.
Yeah, it was on just last night, yes. And I'll have to watch it as well. Mass arrests are taking place. Um, he's in a slightly different group than the Faction 3 White Knights, who are what some people refer to as the light forces. Um, the Ashtar Command has been part of our US government since World War II, since 1945, I believe it was. And they are involved in assisting us in moving into um, enactment of NESARA law, and which is going to mean the end of the banking situation as we know it now. It's going to mean an end to all corrupt political pseudo ownership of the
Okay,
planet.
I'm sorry. It's not like me to interrupt people, but this was what I was going to talk about next. And before I hold that thought, you're on NESARA, so you're not going to lose your train of thought here, I hope. But the thing about this NESARA,
No.
Gisarl, global currency reset thing that's driving people crazy is, well, this might happen next Tuesday. And James Gilliland's been really
Yeah.
facetious about that, and it's driving me crazy. And I'm thinking that the excuse that, well, the powers that be are resisting more than we could imagine, I don't really know if I can actually buy that excuse at this point because it's been like that for too long. So, can you maybe
Well,
calm a
let
few
me
people's
tell you,
nerves here?
Andrew, let me explain that they wanted to enact NESARA in September of 2001. And the old criminal crowd, the old power crowd, as I called them, pulled 9/11. So, I don't want to get into all that because that's an intense web right there. But you can't force through something like this when there are too many stoppages in place. And they tried, and that didn't work. So there's a reason. I understand your impatience completely. I get impatient too some days. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But to get back to what David Wilcock was saying, he is in a slightly different crowd, from very different crowd from the Faction 3 White Knights. And they have emphasized Captain Ashtar has emphasized there will be no violence in terms of mass arrests of the banking crowd, the international criminals, um, high level politicians, and the shadow governments, the billionaires, trillionaires, and so on behind them, who control them, whom you and I don't see for the most part. And those mass arrests have been taking place this whole past month. And this is required in order for NESARA to come through. So I agree with him on some levels from what I understood from what he said. I really do like David Wilcock and have watched him on Gaia.com a lot, and I have a lot of respect for him. He did come under the influence because of his astounding intellect and many gifts. He was kind of co opted by a group that I hope he comes free of as soon as he's able to do so. But I just want to emphasize this is going to happen very peacefully, because what the Faction 3 White Knights are able to do, a lot of them are ETs. They look like humans. They look like they're from here, but they're not. There's a ground crew of about 4 million, and they are human and from here, from Earth. There's 16 million all around the Earth who are sovereign militia forces, and those are generally not from the Earth, but they're able to look like us enough. And they're in every country now, walking amongst the public and assisting us in overcoming the kind of oppression and suppression that we have suffered on this planet for millennia under this very oppressive regime we've been under. And it's just the virus was meant to scare the daylights out of us, control us with fear, make it okay for us to be under um, a police state, and wipe out a lot of people, but it's going to fail at that. And there are galactics who are working with us right now to stem the flow of illness and make sure it doesn't wipe out a lot of people. And I can believe the people are getting better because it only had a 1 or 2% death rate in any event. Um, it's just being mitigated through and through. And I just, if you look at the last few messages, the one I put out today, the message to Lightworkers, on my website, CarolineOceanaRyan.com, go to the message to Lightworkers, look at the last 3, today and the 2 before that, because this lovely group of higher beings I channeled, the collective, work with us not only in terms of giving us reassurance, but every single one of those messages has higher energies embedded in it to assist, to reassure, to strengthen you, to add to your resources. None of it's going to scold you for being a bad light worker if you've had moments of feeling stressed or anxious or afraid. All of it's just going to build you up. It's going to help you feel stronger. And, you know, that's what it's there for. And what they're saying in this latest message that I put out today is that instead of slowing human evolvement, this time of supposed crisis, it's sort of a healing crisis, you know, that people go through at times. And it's there to assist us in our involvement, this time of being quieter, of going beyond even material needs, of realizing we're more than our income, more than the amount of, you know, paper products or food in the refrigerator. As important as all of that is, we are bigger than that. There's something in us that is far more powerful than any of our circumstances. And it's gently nudging us to realize our inner sovereignty and to claim our sovereignty entirely as light beings in human form. And that's what most people are. They just haven't realized it yet. So that's what I wanted to say about the virus, and that if you're, you know, find someone to talk to if you're going through a hard time. I'm doing, you know, as much as I can, answering a ton of emails and doing sessions with people and whatnot, and doing this free group call I just did. But on Tuesday, and I'm probably in some ways as stressed or overworked as anybody, but I'm doing what I can, you know, with yoga stretches, yoga postures, and taking a brisk walk outside to get any nervousness I've collected from other people, get that out of my system, rather than having a fight with family members. If you live with other people, I would say go out if you can. Go outside, sit outside, or take a walk if you're allowed to do that in your community, if you're not under total lockdown. Do some yoga postures if you can. There's free yoga instruction on YouTube. Write down how you're feeling. Sit down and talk to your spirit team of spirit guides, higher self, and angelic guardians. Tell them you need their direction. If you don't hear them inwardly, that's okay. They can feed those ideas to your mind. An idea will pop up, or some reassurance will pop up, and it'll have a special light around it. And that's how you know it comes from your higher self. So I would say just everybody's got to dive into self-care and giving themselves a chance to realize their own inner resources like we never have before. Because it's not so much the world is in crisis so much as a changeover, a shift. And we'll see what the next few months bring. Just be aware we're in the midst of a tremendous change, but it's always for the better. It's not for calamity. That's just a veneer in front of, it's a facade in front of the actual situation. So, but I hear you, you know, if you're frustrated, Andrew, about the whole NESARA thing, we can talk about that. I understand. I have people, you know, I text back and forth with friends, not just people emailing, but I text back and forth with friends, and they're sort of like, I've just given up at this point. And I'm always like, NESARA now, Diane, you know, and really getting impatient for it some days, and other days just saying, like Eckhart Tolle says, you know, let's be grateful for what we have, fully accept the present moment, thankful for what is, and thankful for being. I have that written on my to-do list at the top of my daily, it's a calendar, my calendaring system, and I say that every day aloud, whether I feel like it or not, because it's the idea I want to grow into, you know. I left out of my life story that when I was 35, memories started to come up of my poor crazy father who was probably bipolar. He was very troubled, but it was memories of him molesting me for the first 7 years of my life, starting in infancy. And I went into real shock from that, and I've suffered from complex PTSD my whole life. And something very interesting is that, you know, healers and energy workers like Bonnie Saratori will point out everybody's got PTSD, and it's going to be triggered right now because of what's going on. And the reason everybody has PTSD is because we've all been violated. We've all had times where we were beaten or saw family members killed or we starved or died of the plague. We've all had that one life or another. We've all been traumatized, and we all carry that in our energies. And this is only coming up now so we can heal it. Okay? What I went through with my biological father in this life, I've been through with him. This is the 60, my friend Omina, a phenomenal psychic, said you've had 63 lives. Or either that was one of Bonnie Saratori's people, a spiritual accelerator, said you've had 63 lives with this person who was your father in this life. And every time I did what we all do. I came into this earth life and I said, this time I'm going to declare my independence. I'm not going to be abused. And of course it did happen because it started in infancy. And we write these scripts and we write them to work through the old trauma and to get over it, the past life trauma as well as the current. And so when I heal that trauma, I'm healing all of them. When I do an energy clearing, when I do an energy healing with myself or anybody, we're all clearing all of that old trauma as well as what we're going through right now. Nothing you're going through right now is new. None of it. It's just that it's come up in this very special time so you and I can finally dissolve it. That's all. Okay? You're all old hat at this. So anyway, that's I don't make myself out to be special. When I say I'm an incest survivor, that's not my full identification. It's one color in many, many stripes of colors, and it's just who I am. So that's all right. I've come to accept it, and you know, crawled out of the abuse cycle as we all have to, and that applies to everyone: men, women, children, bi, straight, gay, otherwise, everyone. It applies to everyone. This is our time of sovereignty. So anyway, if you wanted to move on from that, that's fine.
Interesting you mentioned the expression, this is old hat. I've never heard that expression in my life, and now I hear it twice in the same day. David Wilcock actually used that, and now you use that. Make with that
Yeah.
whatever you will. I've never heard that expression. Interesting. But anyhow, about these entities that you communicate with, Ascended Masters, Galactics, Earth Elementals, Fey Elders, Angelic Legions, and Archangels, known as the Collective. What dimension, density, realm, planet, universe, galaxy, where these come from are we talking about here? Can you answer that question regarding location and dimension, density, whatever the
There's
term?
no
Go
there's
ahead.
no such thing as location because all times are now and all dimensions are now. It's just that are here. It's just that we can't see them because they're vibrating at such a high level. And I know what you mean. The collective are sixth dimensional and all the way up to source energy. And I don't know how many dimensions that is. Could be 100, could be 1,000. Your guess is as good as mine. Many, they're telling me, they have a sense of humor. But it's like Sylvia Brown used to say, you can look at the blades of a fan, all right, and they're there. When you turn that fan on, the blades are moving so fast that it is such a blur, you can't see it anymore. You can't see the blades. You just see a slight blur color, but you can't really see individual blades anymore because of the vibration. And it's just like that. Maybe there might be terms of location. She used to say that the other side, as she called it, which I'm guessing is fifth or sixth dimension, started at about 3 feet above where you and I walk on the ground in our world, okay? And then it went up from there. And she said to her guide one day, wow, the fifth dimension, you know, the other side is right here. And her guide was sort of, yes, but it's just vibrating at such a level that you don't see it unless you move up to that vibration. And there are people, you know, babies can see angels. Um, they can see fairy folk. A lot of people recount that they can see fairies and used to talk to them and be friends with them. But as they grew older, by the time they were 10, 11, 12, maybe even by the age of 7, they couldn't see them anymore. And it's that at that age that we are fully indoctrinated in the old matrix setup where the left brain dominates and that which doesn't seem logical, scientific, or mathematical is just thrown out, just chucked out with the garbage as being too unlikely, too preposterous, too ridiculous, too bizarre, and don't trouble me with such nonsense, sort of a thing. And so we come in with these beautiful sensibilities, which are then, scuppered, as the British say. They're just tossed aside. They still exist, they're still there, but we dislocate from them. So I'm looking forward to the time where when I can see angels again, and when I can see beautiful elementals and nature spirits, and see when someone is visiting from another realm, whether it's an ancestor or a guide or whomever. There are people who can see these things now. They're just a little unusual, tiny minority of people on the planet. But these are our abilities, just as transporting ourselves, teleporting from one place to another. I had a woman on a show that I'm a co-host on last night, Joy Elaine, and she was talking about this. She can go up into the ships, and it's not exactly bilocating. She sends her consciousness and her etheric body up to one of the starships where her twin flame is, and she sits in on council meetings. And you and I do this in our sleep state. We just don't remember when we wake up. That's all. But we're capable, absolutely. It will come back to us. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I think you did a nice job for her. You pretty much made it clear that there is no location,
No.
because it's on one place. But I mean, the dimensions and densities. There's a lot of people will say different things about how many dimensions and densities there are. Some even say dimension and density aren't the same thing. Some say they are. So not even going to get into that area. But thank you for trying to make sense of how we can make sense of the existence of these entities, even though we can't see them. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's imaginary. Tell that to Jesse Ventura. That classic interview with David Icke is never going to get old, where he says, "You can't see them, so they're imaginary, and you doing this for the money." And
Oh,
yeah, give me a break. But
God.
anyhow, speaking of money, back to NESARA for just a moment. One thing
Sure.
about this that really I can't help but wonder if it when it comes out, the timing factor. I mean, here's the deal. I have an IRA and a 401k. I want to convert it all into gold or silver. Um, but my father has kind of put me in a tight spot. Little did I know that my father was nice enough to maybe donate me some money once a year into my retirement accounts to help me out for retirement. I wanted to convert it all to gold or silver, but he threatened me saying, if you do that, put all of it into gold or silver, you're not getting any more donation money from me. He claims to be a genius financially, but I don't know if this is a good idea on his part. I mean, if you want to time your gold and silver purchases to get ready for the gold backed currency in NESARA, the last thing you want to do is wait after the announcement is made, because it's just like a contest where they say be one of the first 20 callers after you hear the keyword and you will receive a prize. You better be sure that the moment you hear it, you call, or even have the number partially dialed already to call in, because you wait any longer, you're not going to get any prize, because the phone lines are going to be jammed up with the early birds. Well, the same thing, it would be true, I would think, with a gold currency go back currency reset, because if you wait any longer after the announcement is made and try to buy gold and silver, they're going to say, sorry, it's all sold out. Everybody already bought it since the announcement was made.
Oh,
So I naturally want to get my gold and silver and get my retirement accounts backed by gold and silver before the announcement is made. But when it comes to the timing for this, you don't know when it's going to happen. And that kind of did cost me back in like the 2012 timeframe, when I bought into the whole financial collapse idea and got rid of some things that, well, in time you want to get rid of to prepare for NESARA, but I got rid of them too soon. That was bad timing, and it did hurt me a little financially in that regard. So the timing of this, how do you work out this conundrum, getting all the gold before it happens and not after the announcement is made?
Really, Andrew, I think you're looking at this through a third dimensional lens. You're looking at this through the understanding you and I have been given since we were infants about how the banking system works. This current banking system is going bye-bye, okay? We're not going to have anything called a bank anymore. We're not going to have to worry about starvation or housing or can I afford this medical care, even though I desperately need it. NESARA equals sovereignty, it equals freedom, it equals liberation, okay? And I don't mean in some crazy 60s, join this party and you'll be liberated kind of a way. I mean, everything shifts, everything changes, government structures change, economic structures change. NESARA is all about, okay, National Economic Security and Reformation Act. If you have complete reformation, never mind about the Protestant church, small r, if you have complete reformation, you have a complete changeover to an entirely different system. And in that moment, we rejoin all the other planets in becoming part of the intergalactic confederation of worlds, okay? We don't just labor under this old criminal banking crowd. We don't just call in quick to make sure our investment is okay. Look, you've worked hard all your life, I'm sure of that. What about the people who worked hard all their life? They're 75 and they have nothing because they never earned that much, or they or a family member had medical problems. Our system is not equitable. This is not a just system. They're charging, what are they charging now? 35% or 40% or something on credit cards, APR, unless you've got a great credit rating? That is not an equitable system, that's usury. What, how can you, they took people's houses back. The banks took people's houses away when those people had never been late a day in their life with their mortgage payment. This is not equitable. This is not just or doable. When you talk about NESARA, you're not just talking about a changeover to gold currency or rainbow currency, and that's the only change. You're talking about goodbye to these criminal banks, goodbye to the stock markets, no more of that nonsense. You're talking about the release of something like 60,000 forms of higher technology, which do exist, which have been utterly suppressed for well over 100 years, some of them, okay, including free energy. Those forms of higher technology could cure cancer in a minute, cure broken legs, cure paralysis, cure MS, you name it. They can cure it because they know how to shift your vibration out of vibrating with that illness. They know how to make a tumor go away in an instant. This isn't fantasy, and this isn't a lie, and this isn't a scam. This is the truth. I've heard it from people whose word I would probably stake my life on. All right? And the Faction 3 White Knight, who speaks on his radio show, I can name the network if you want, but his name is Rama Berkowitz. He and his wife, Tara Green, will talk about this. And anybody wants to tune into their work or their website, you're going to learn a lot. He's the only one, like I say, who has not signed a non-disclosure agreement. Everybody in the media, everybody in politics has had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, swearing they would never mention NESARA publicly, not even speak of it, probably in private half the time, or else they would be done away with. Not just lose their job, they would be gone. And so they keep quiet about it. And there was an actor who was going to speak up about NESARA, and he was killed. That was a couple of years ago. And, he was going to speak up at the Oscars, and that's the whole world watching. And, it's just kind of astounding to me, the disinformation sites out there saying, buy this currency or that, and you'll have lots and lots of money come to NESARA. No, it's not about that. And really, Andrew, if you want to change over to gold, look, takes at least some of your money and change over to gold if you want to do that, because I can tell you those banks are going to go down, and I don't want to see you or anybody else have a heart attack. You would have to go with a federal credit union or a credit union that is not NCUA insured. All right, all banks are FDIC insured, which that means the government can dip their paws in, or the bank can absorb its customers' funds in the blink of an eye and not even tell you in the next second. So you want to move away from that if you can. and find a credit union if you can that's not NCUA insured, because that's the same as FDIC. And they can absolutely absorb your funds. I know people who are just keeping cash in a safe at home. And I would say not a bad idea. That's for the changeover. That's for those 2 or 3 days during which times banks and credit unions would be closed, and you wouldn't be able to get your money out because they're putting in the new rainbow currency of NESARA. Even so, I'm getting the clear message right now. Don't panic. Don't flip out. It's not about who has an IRA or who has a pension or who has this savings or that anymore. It's fine if you have those things. That's okay. But that's not what NESARA is about. We're going over to a completely different system. In the galactic world, in the ET world, they have more what they call, I think they call them trading posts. And I don't know exactly how it works, but there's nothing called a bank or a credit union. There just isn't.
Okay, let me stop you there for a moment. I heard you also say we don't have to worry about Wall Street anymore. Well, hold on a minute here. I've heard from people like Alex Collier that we're the only civilization that they know of anyway in the Milky Way galaxy that uses money. Although all the other civilizations that don't, they still have to engage in some form of trade.
Yes.
And that raises the question, okay, do all those planets, is there such a thing as a casino, or the mother of all casinos, a stock market? You would have to think, and if you're not, you have, in order to be a free society, people have to have the right to gamble if they choose to do that. However, one also thinks, okay, if you've attained such a high level of consciousness, would you maybe not gamble because gambling is not really resonant with a high level of consciousness, or can it be? I'm debating whether or
Yeah.
not to invest
No,
in
you're right.
hydrogen.
It's a sort of it's not, I don't think it's so bad per se, but you're right that the stock market is, as the collective call it, an upper class gambling den. Yes. The message I'm getting, I have never asked that question before, is there gambling or stock market on other planets? And I'm getting that it's just a game. It's not a matter of gaining income. It's just to see who might win. It's like just a game of chance. It occurs at different levels than ours does. In other words, there's not the desperation and the desperate need for profit and to prove oneself clever for investing in certain stock at certain times. You might say it's not ego based, and it's not fear based, and it's not grasping. It's not about, as people say, greed and profit per se. It's not that at all. So yeah, this is a very low vibrational planet. It has been. That's changing, thankfully. I do believe we're stepping right now into the fifth dimension, but we still got all these old 3D forms. So it's hard for people to even imagine what's coming to us. It's really difficult for them. And I understand that. Probably most of what I'm saying just strikes people as nonsense. And I would say, okay, I'll be a fool for that because it's a beautiful vision, and what we envision on this planet tends to happen. It's true, I've noticed in my own life and other people's lives. So why not envision something incredibly beautiful, create that together, and let's rid ourselves of all the lies, all the fraud. Um, I don't want to get too much into talking about politics or religion, but boy, we've really been hoodwinked. And the Matrix, it engages us, not just our etheric bodies, but our minds, and I know David Wilcock and Corey Good, Insider Secret Space Program Insider Corey Good, will talk about this, how we're just hooked into the bigger matrix like it's a drug, because we're taught, well, that's where your salvation and your safety are. It's in Big Brother. And you take us off that, and there's going to be a real shift. It's a technological hook. They're hooked into it technologically. We're fading off of it gradually. I'm being reminded of that. And excuse me, we are pulling out of it, but slowly.
Well, there's a lot of things people can do to speed up the process, and some of the other things we could talk about that we can improve in our reality to enhance the speed up, things like structured water. I bring that up because that seems to be one of the tabs here on your site. I mean, I've heard a lot of things about water, how it's not what we're led to believe it is. I've even heard people say that clouds are monatomic, like the fourth state of elements and water in this case. But is that similar to the structured water you're talking about, or is this completely different? And how can people benefit from this? If you sell this, you can make a sales pitch out of this. You there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just have a bit of cough. I have allergies. I'm not sick, I have allergies. um, no, I used to be an affiliate for structured water filters. I'm not anymore. But no, the thing with structured water filters is that the water we get out of the faucet or just about anywhere, anything we drink, it's deconstructed. It's not structured anymore on a molecular level. It's not like when water is pure, it's structured on a molecular level, and that kind of water will absolutely hydrate your cells. It will assist with your whole well-being. It's very calming to the mind and emotions, to the etheric body, the way water is meant to. So when you structure water, you're getting pure water as if, like, you know, it had just come, you just found it in a pure mountain stream, or it just fell off a glacier, only even purer than that. Basically, because it spins the water tens of thousands of times. So if you go on my website and go to the structured water tab, and it has a really interesting video that should be helpful and information. And I couldn't believe the difference at first when I first started drinking structured water. I just felt so much calmer. And it's so helpful for the body because it really does hydrate you in ways that, you know, if you just plain get water out of the faucet, or heaven forbid you get a drink from anything plastic, because plastic has formaldehyde in it. So people are drinking all this water out of plastic bottles, and I wish they'd switch to, you know, some other ceramic or glass to keep their drink in as they're going around, you know, for a portable drink, because plastic is just so bad for us on so many levels. It throws us off, and it's an endocrine disruptor. It throws us off hormonally. It harms the body's systems, the organs, etc. But this water it's actually kind of fifth dimensional. So you could spray it on a food with a mister, or if you're going to have, say, vegetables or fruits, you rinse it in structured water first, even if it's not organic. Those vegetables or fruits, structured water will assist in removing the pesticides. Even with organic produce now, they're using Roundup, unfortunately. So rinse everything in structured water before you cook it or slice it up. Even if, say, if you boil an egg, boil it in structured water. Believe it or not, etherically, it affects the egg, even though what you're going to eat is inside the shell. You buy something that's packaged. Put the package, even at least part of it, put that package, if you can, if it's not paper product, into a container of structured water, and that lifts the vibration of what's inside that package. Not very healthy to eat packaged food, and I'm trying myself to move away from it, but it's difficult. You know, we're raised with it, and it's everywhere. But what it does is raise your vibration, and it's astounding, Andrew. It really is. It's beautiful stuff. And, you know, people say, well, I'm not going to drink out of the faucet, even if I put it in a filter, because that's got fluoride and, you know, chlorine in it. Well, any chemicals in anything that you drink will be nullified and removed, basically, by the structured water filter. You can get a portable one, or you can get one that hooks under the sink or hooks onto the shower, so you're bathing in structured water. Or if you have a bath, just run the portable one, or you go out swimming in a pool, just run the portable filter. It's about as big as your hand. Just run that through the water a bit, and that will structure the water. Just, you know, 1 teaspoon of structured water put into a glass of water, or any drink at all. Whatever you're drinking, put it 1 teaspoon of, you know, structure 1 teaspoon of it, and then stir it into the rest, and that whole glass of drink, whatever it is, will be structured. It can even improve the taste, nullifies chemicals, raises the vibration, hydrates the cells better. We're chronically dehydrated. We really are. So, you know, This is just something that's beautifully helpful. And it is, in my opinion, a fifth dimensional invention and a very beautiful one. So I encourage people to use it. I really do.
Thank you for that. Some of the other things that you offer, the meditation series. One question about meditation, controversial subject, the best pose for meditation. Some of you have gone as far as saying the lotus flower position that so many people seem to like with meditation. That's not a good position because you might short circuit crossing your arms and legs or legs like that. And short circuit, does that, how's that possible? Your body doesn't have a way to overcome that, some would assert. I don't know. I mean, does that make any sense to you?
I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard that. That's interesting. I don't go into lotus position when I meditate. I lie down and either speak with my team, do a visualization, or I listen to a guided meditation. Generally not one that I've made for some odd reason. It just flips me out to hear my own voice, even though I'm channeling as I do them. There are different people I listen to. Wonderful guided meditations, but yeah, do what works for you. If you want to bring in your higher self, apparently one of the best ways to do it is just to sit up straight with feet flat on the floor and sort of sit with palms up, to receive. And that's helpful. I've just been talking to my team for so long. They come in easily and talk to me, whatever I'm doing. And no, I can't actually physically see them, except in my mind's eye. So that's not physically seeing. But no, I hadn't heard about short circuiting. That's interesting. I think we're probably all short circuiting a little bit right now anyway.
Yes, I can certainly agree with that. Now, your entities that you communicate with, I guess I might as well give you the floor now for a little while. Take as long as you need. Of all the things that they've told you, that they've educated you, gave you knowledge and wisdom about over the course of time, for as long as you've been channeling them, I'm sure there are certain things that you've starred and asterisked, saying I better remember this more so than other things that they tell me. Definitely of huge significance that is worthy of me remembering and other people and sharing with other people. So I'd like to give you the floor as long as you need. Of all the things that they've told you, the extra highlighted things that you believe are worthy to get out. Now's your time to get out all the key stuff.
Well, I'll ask what they want to share. My impression is that, as I say, we've been under the thumb of an old crowd that has not cared about human life and only wanted to use us as slaves for many thousands of years. And that time is over. This universe has been in what the Hindu call the Kali Yuga, an age of destruction, an era of destruction for the past 26,000 years approximately. 1 second. Sorry, I have allergies, so I'm coughing and sneezing a bit. So we've been in that for a while. Obviously, we're now moving into the Sat Yuga or Satya Yuga, which is an era of peace and prosperity. And people will write to me and say, well, I don't see much peace and prosperity so far. We're still struggling, we're still at war, etc., etc. And I would say, but it is beginning. The fact that you and I are talking about Earth going into a higher dimension, the fact that you and I are talking about Earth going into a time of peace and prosperity, a 25,800 year cycle of that, this is a miracle. Life on this planet, people were lucky in the 1600s. If they made it to age 40, they were lucky. People would die of the strangest forms of illness or injury or ridiculous superstition, what they put children through, what they put women through for centuries. Unbelievable. It was par for the course for a woman to have 10, 12, 14, 17 children up into her early 40s for centuries, and nobody blinked. I can tell you, women aren't made for that. We are not made for that. That's just unflippin' believable to me. But people did it because the children would go to work at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 and help the family survive. And no birth control, no self-control on the part of the men. Women were property, children were property. And what the collective have come in to say is, yeah, you're moving into this absolutely astounding era of peace and prosperity, but understand that you're in a huge shift. You're in a time of transition. So similar to what you were saying earlier, Andrew, it's not going to happen in the blink of an eye. It's not like modern life where you hit a button and this happens, where you put in your pin and hit yes or hit $60 and $60 is spewed out of the machine and you grab it and you go on your way. It's not a push button situation. We have to evolve. We have to actually do the work/play of actually seeking our authentic selves. Some of that means energy work, and there's plenty of free energy work online. If you can't put out, $150 or $200 for an energy clearing session for an hour, that's okay. There's plenty of stuff online that's free, and you get cleared of the old trauma. Excuse me. You get cleared of your rage or your grief. You get cleared of entity or energy intrusions and interferences, and you come back into this self who is more and more your authentic self. We're here to be our true and authentic selves. Finally, we're here to meld with the energies of our higher self. Finally, and we're here to become sovereign, independent beings who take their own destiny into their hands and stop holding their breaths, stop feeling like a victim, stop trying to be a savior or look for one, stop trying to save themselves and other people, and just look at the process of being on a path. And this is a very foreign concept. Which actually came in a bit in the 60s and early 70s when people were looking at spirituality in terms of wisdom and self-understanding and interconnection with universe and with others, looking into oneness, dropping duality, the idea that everything is going to be either all bad or all good, and understanding that there's light in everything, like the yin yang symbol. There's light, a bit of light even in the darkness, a bit of darkness even in the light, because we've got free will. And what the collective have come in, I think, to remind us is it's what Eckhart Tolle calls the good that has no opposite. And they're saying right now, we're just reminding people that it's all good, that you've come in purely for growth, for healing, for evolvement, and to assist your planet. You haven't come in to save everyone. You haven't come in to be right all the time. You haven't come in to win every argument on Facebook. You haven't come in to prove that you know more than other people as far as which politician to trust and which one to despise. You certainly haven't come in to invest in foreign currencies, which are going to suddenly play out in a big way. That's a very dark scheme, and I would avoid it if I were you. You haven't come in to panic about health or finances or any of it. You've come in to be in the present moment, to love who you are, to love nature, to love other human beings, to accept them and allow them to follow their path and allow them to be where they are, and to develop certainly etheric and emotional boundaries where you don't let other people treat you like, whatever. You require respect, but you also love and respect yourself. And you engage in the kind of self-care that means you notice. If your day isn't going well, what's going on with your energies? What can you notice about your energies that is not working for you? If you hate your job, what can you notice about the energy patterns and the cycles, repeated behaviors and insights and hurt areas that are struggling in your life that need your attention? If your relationship with your children or your spouse or partner isn't going well, or if you're afraid to be in a relationship, if that isn't going so hot, what's going on there? What's behind it? Go into it. Don't avoid it. Ask questions. Don't pretend everything's wonderful. Don't pretend you're this beneficent light worker being who never has a problem on God's earth. If you do have challenges, that's all right. You've come in to deal with those challenges. So they've come in really to assist us in moving to a higher level, which comes out. We come out of judgment. We go into the heart and out of this constant left brain dominance and constant over vigilance. If this doesn't add up, if the equation doesn't add up, then it doesn't exist. Or if this doesn't help me in 5 seconds, then it's total nonsense and I'm not going to believe it. We haven't come in to prove ourselves and just buy things and just always have an easy day. We've come in to know who we are in this particular time, in this particular cultural context, in this particular family we were born into, with these particular people we've chosen to love or believe in. And certainly it doesn't have anything to do with who you worship. It doesn't have anything to do with what college you went to or didn't go to. It doesn't have anything to do with your color or your culture or your class. All that is just, those are just trimmings on the side. Who you are and what you are is so much bigger than that. It makes all of that into not even a tiny speck in a spectrum as big as this universe. You've lived many lives. You've been every denomination. You've been every color. You've been every ethnicity and religion. You've been every gender or preference, sexual preference or identity. You've done it all. And don't kid yourself, oh, I've never had that problem. Of course you have, and you've still got to heal it. And this is why I go to websites like spiritualacceleration.com. They have free energy clearings on that side. I recommend it to everybody and their sister because, boy, do we need that kind of help. And we need to realize there's been extreme interference all over the planet in human affairs. And we're not here to pretend that that's okay, I'm above that because I go to this, whatever, church, temple, or mosque, or I vote for this party, or I believe in this politician and I despise that one, or I live in this town and we don't have that problem, or this country and we don't have that problem, or I own an island in the South Pacific and I'm going to create my own utopia. We didn't come in for that kind of separatism. We came in to grasp oneness, all right? We came in to grasp non-duality, and that means constant and complete, utter interconnection with all life. Every other human, every animal, every living organism, every living being, everything of consciousness, which is everything in the universe. A rock or a clump of dirt has its own consciousness. I promise you that. And it's constantly shifting over time, just as you and I are. We came in to drop non-duality, to drop duality and move into non-duality. And that means to stop judging ourselves and others. And this is the issue, and they're nudging me now to say, and to love yourself in that process, because it isn't easy. It doesn't happen very quickly generally. It takes place at a very deep level. It happens in layers, and yet it's what we're here for, and we are doing it. And I just want to encourage people on that front. Sounds impossible, I know, but you're doing it. I swear to you, you're doing it. Or you wouldn't be listening to this now.
Darn right on that one. Now, I heard you mention one of the goals in our life is to live free of duality. Are you in that camp, for lack of a better word, that would assert that it's not in our best interest to use the yin-yang symbol because that keeps us in a matrix of duality? And that's not me talking, that's Lily Earthling Kozlova talking. She says that, and some people I've brought that up with say not everything is a conspiracy, man. The yin-yang symbol has its good benefits. She's taken that way out of proportion. So, but you did say you want to stay from non-duality, so I'm assuming you would be against the yin-yang to some extent.
Well, and I think I just mentioned it, if I remember correctly, that there's a bit of dark in the light, and a bit of light in the dark. And yin-yang is interesting. I take it as a reflection of the human path of growth. I don't think it's all bad. I just think it's a reflection. So I take it as a symbol of where we are and where we've been. But we're coming out of that. We really are. And that's not to say everything's going to mix so that we're all gray. That's not what I mean. I think we're coming out of that belief system. And beliefs are generally things that other people give us. They're not really ours. But I think we're coming out of that belief system that says either you're, all good and you're doing something wonderful, or you're with the dark and you're really doing something awful. People are in progression. There are people who have been following the dark for a long time who are now moving over into the light, and they're having to disengage themselves from old agreements, old contracts, old associations. I've had channeling sessions with people where I've had to assure a group of people who come up etherically. They show up within that person's consciousness and they're saying he or she belongs to us. And they point to a contract from a past life, and the collective will say to them, all those contracts, null and void. That is finished, that is done, that is over. Move on. And you do not own this person any longer if you ever did. And they cut all ties between them and that person. Now, sometimes it happens in layers, sometimes it happens. But then, you have to ask yourself, well, who or what might I be attached to that I need to disengage from in that case? And this is where energy clearings come in, and they're really priceless. Something interesting I ask people to do in the collectibles, give them this too on our abundance group calls and in channeling sessions, is write at the top, get a pen and paper, right at the top of the page, let's say, who are you and why are you holding me back in whatever, fill in the blank, relationships, having a wonderful spouse or partner, doing really well financially when that's been my vision, doing really well with my health, drawing to me loyal, kind, supportive friends. Just ask whatever's troubling you, all right? Switch then, after you write that question at the top, switch the pen to the non-dominant hand, which you never write with, and just let the subconscious provide the answer. Now, whoever answers, okay, that could be a variety. That could be your subconscious answering. It could be a past life self. It could be your child self. It could be some entity sitting in your energies, all right? Including somebody who died and who refused to move on and who decided to take up residence in your body. Yes, that happens. I remember reading about it years ago and being horrified, and now I'm like, I feel strong enough to face it. But at any rate, that's a reality for many, many, many millions of people, more people than not, they're telling me. So it could be something coming up that you're not expecting, but boy, you're going to get your answer if you allow it to come through. Yes, the handwriting will look a little squaggly and squiggly, but type it up, abbreviate words if that's easier, and type it up as soon as you can so you can really see what's going on. And then you can dialogue with this voice and you can figure out what's been holding you back in that part of your life. So I would say, yeah, sure, we're moving out of duality, but understand, again, it's a process. We've got to heal first. Just banning the yin-yang symbol isn't going to cure everything by this time tomorrow. We've got to work through this. So that's what I would say. I know a lot of people are going gung-ho on, oh, this could mean that and this could mean this. And, I understand. I've gotten a little hypersensitive about symbols and whatnot first. But understand, we're on a path whereby we're working all this out. It's not automatically okay just because our left brain grasps it. It's kind of like you sit down to say affirmations, your left brain is going, oh, 100%. I am financially independent and free and entirely free of debt. Wonderful. Meanwhile, your subconscious, which runs 95% of your life or more, is saying, no, that's not true. You kidding? I've lived like 300 lives where I could barely pull one meal a day together. And that's what holds you in place. And that's reflected in your outer situation, okay? So until you heal your subconscious, that's where you are. You're stuck in that situation. This is something organized religion hardly ever talks about. Our new religion, known as the New Age or light community crowd, will only occasionally talk about it because it's so potent. Almost nobody wants to face it, and we've been conditioned to think it's nonsense. It doesn't believe it isn't agree. I'm an independent being. If I say something is this way, it's going to be that way. Well, maybe, but only once you convince your subconscious. So I tell people, if you want to write it out in an affirmation, leave some space on the right-hand side of the page and write out your immediate gut reaction to that statement. If I write out right now, I weigh 125 pounds and am in perfect health. And then I immediately respond and type out my response on this sort of thin column on the right-hand side of the page. That response is going to be, oh, that's a nice idea, but no. And then I write that affirmation again. Still, I get, no. I would love that, but no. I write out the affirmation again, and I keep writing it, and I keep responding. And then I notice the responses go kind of neutral after being negative for 3 or 4 times. And then after a bit, I notice they're going, wow, well, okay. And then they're going, yeah, why not me? I love it, yeah. What that is working through the subconscious resistance. So if you're not doing anything to heal your subconscious and all the trauma and fear and out shock and horror that it has absorbed over hundreds of Earth lives, you're kind of missing the point. Meditation can assist, but only if it's going to work with you energetically, to work with your subconscious, to work with your etheric body. So I just try to put that across to people. Understand what you're up against, please. It's, the left brain is nice. It helps us organize things. It has its role. But I think Eckhart Tolle really hit a gold mine, I mean that figuratively, um, when he said that it's an illness to live purely in the mind and logical thought and shatter all the time. That's an imbalance, that's a dysfunction, and it's time to come out of it. Yeah.
Yes, it is time to come out of it, but well, is it time? And I bring that up because there's something I'd like to read here and then give your take on what you believe or know your entities would have to say about this. And it's kind of not a pleasant thing I'm about to read in regards to the chance of humanity waking up at a very, very fast rate. But anyway, here it goes. And I quote, this is a document that, a little article, excuse me, Andrew Bartz is the Akashic Records reader, wrote in his insight emails that he sends out to his subscribers. This one is called The Future with a question mark after future. And it reads, quote, "You want to know what it's going to be like in the future. It's about saving our culture. It's about cleaning up our planet. You know, the financial system can be taken care of. It's already been thought of, but to implement a new financial system means there has to be a time for us as a human species to let down, to sleep, to heal, okay? There was a time when human awakening began on another timeline, on another previous timeline genocide during the second paradox where we made it to 2004 and our species was told about UFOs and it was so harsh in the way that it came through, not that the media did it wrong, and during their breakdown it was okay." All
Okay,
right,
and
I was afraid I lost you because I got a message saying recording finished, and I didn't know if you were still with me, and
no,
apparently you weren't. So,
no,
okay, well,
you went away. You went far away.
okay, so well, I don't know where I was on this when it went out, but I'm just going to quickly read it again because I think it's important. Maybe that's why we lost because this is important and they don't want people to hear this. But
Okay.
anyhow, here it goes. The thing that Bartzis wrote was, quote, "You want to know what it's going to be like in the future. It's about saving our culture. It's about cleaning up our planet. You know, the financial system can be taken care of. It's already been thought of, but to implement a new financial system means there has to be a time for us as a human species to let down, to sleep, to heal, okay? There was a time when human awakening began on another timeline, on another previous timeline genocide during the second paradox, where we made it to 2004 and our species was told about UFOs, and it was so harsh in the way that it came through. Not that the media did it wrong, and during their breakdown it was okay. Our people, ourself, were so confounded by the lies that many of them just stopped living, and the whole society and the whole structure fell apart, and that cannot happen. There cannot be a cultural breakdown. Something of our food has to survive. Something of the way we live has to survive. There was incredibly beautiful lifetimes here. It has not all been dark. It is just propaganda that has made it look that way." Okay, the important thing I get from this is, okay, there was another timeline where we all were told about everything. Humanity couldn't handle the truth. Society fell apart. And unfortunately, people like Corey Good, who channel higher or communicate with higher level entities, have said that some of the people that the entities they communicate with have asserted we can't throw all this stuff out to humanity because it would be like giving a baby an AK rifle. It's not going to work out too well. Well, okay, that's really, really disturbing, and maybe me reading this gives people a kick in the pants. Maybe that's why they decided to shut me down when I was reading this, and I do like to read this every so often. Well, it makes a powerful statement, and it goes in directly with what you said about being able to implement the new financial system and get the truth out. But how will humanity handle it, and do your entities think they can handle it?
Well, this is a huge issue, Andrew, and everyone. Um, my feeling is that full disclosure, as they say, and mass landings of ships will occur. I think that we will have a lot of help in dealing with it. Probably bigger than that. I'm just going to ask the collective. Yeah, um, probably bigger than that. And they're saying right now the loss of the old power structure is going to strike people as unthinkable because they have so much personally invested in their place of worship, their favorite political party, their favorite country, which would probably be the one they were born in, their favorite cultural viewpoint, their love of violence to solve things, or whatever it is that they're doing. That to see that shift and change is going to be, you know, just too much for some people. I think, from what I understand, some people will just keel over. They will just, yeah, they'll have a lot of trouble. So this is why I think another reason why light workers have come in as they have, or light bringers, whatever you want to call us. We are anchoring this new reality, which is an intergalactic one, and one of freedom, sovereignty, self-expression, individuality, but also oneness and non-duality. We are anchoring those frequencies into the planet and into human consciousness so that when people do find out the truth, they won't lose it. And there have been timelines where Earth did not make it, from what I understand. There's either 5 or 6 other timelines where we succumb to the kind of destruction that ends a planet, basically. And from what I've been told, what I hear from positive sources is that's not going to be allowed to happen on this timeline. It just won't. And I see shifts. There's more and more sightings of ships all around the world. It's increasing, starships, and I think it's fantastic. People are welcoming. I think their hearts have been prepared. Many people, maybe not all, but maybe plenty more than half. They've been prepared to realize we're not alone in this universe, and that this shift to a fair and equitable world society is not only possible, it's impending, it's going to happen now. And we're being assisted with that. We're being assisted from the angelic realm, the archangels, our higher selves, our souls, from loved ones who have passed on, from our ancestors, whatever help they can lend. Some of them are still having problems themselves, I realize, but whatever help they can lend, from the nature spirits, earth elementals, Gaia, Lady Gaia, the earth herself. We're being assisted on many fronts, benevolent ETs. We're not in this alone. So, yeah, I can imagine some people will try to protect themselves if it comes to that. It depends on how they present what's going on, okay? If people can be reassured at least that they won't go hungry, won't ever have to stress about housing anymore, won't ever have to stress about illness, or where do I educate my child where they won't be bullied to death, or where they get a decent education where there's enough books and computers to go around, and the hallways don't have black mold on the ceiling or whatever. They won't have to stress, well, what if I get sick when I'm age 70 and I don't have the money for insurance and Medicare doesn't cover what I need? We won't have these stresses anymore. And if people can open up a bit and realize, well, wait a minute, this is happening for our higher good. Our consciousness has requested this. We came in requiring this. We came in requesting and requiring of the universe that this planet move to a higher vibrational level, and the universe is moving into an era of peace and prosperity. So this is just going to unfold now. And I can accept that. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's dangerous. And that's part of that matrix training we've all received. Uh-oh, be careful. That keeps us in that caveman, cavewoman consciousness that anything new might be a conceivable danger. So we start to resist. We go into a place of resistance or cognitive dissonance and say this can't be, or this shouldn't be happening. And I think we're dropping that. I think we're going to move out of it. So he makes some interesting points, that fellow. I don't follow his work so much, but yeah, I can imagine on other timelines it has been boggled, but we are so being aided this time, Andrew. It's just astounding the help we're getting. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Oh yes, Alex Collier mentioned him earlier regarding what he said about our financial system being like the only one in the cosmos. He also said in a recent interview that he did on the Goldfish Report YouTube channel that the draconian reptilian overlords have left Earth. So that raises the question, okay, if you want to play it by the rule, we're only as strong as our weakest link, then, well, it would make sense that whatever the minions of the overlords that are still on Earth, we got to get rid of them as soon as possible to speed up this ascension.
Yeah.
So are there still any like reptilians in undersea bases, or are they basically all gone too? Or does that fall out of your area of
All right.
research?
The message, what I've heard from this faction 3 White Knight, who is under the Ashtar command, is that they are being routed out, And the message I'm getting right now is simply they are being removed. And likewise, mass arrests are occurring all over the planet and have been for the past month. And that's the old international criminal crowd, the old power crowd, as I call them. So that would include, yeah, reptilians. You know, they shapeshift. We've got reptilians who look like humans. They look fine until you see their eyes changing or see them shapeshift.
Oh, okay, hold on. I got to interrupt you. The next Ancient Aliens episode this Saturday, it's titled "The Shapeshifters," and some people have I've heard recent interviews saying that David Icke is right, but his story about the reptilian shapeshifting is a bit of an exaggeration. It's not so much that the humans can shapeshift into a reptilian when they drink
No,
human blood, but it's more of the reptilian entities from another dimension attaching themselves to the chakra system or the aura of the soulless entity human, and hijacking it and controlling it.
that can happen, most assuredly. That can happen. They can move into somebody's body, shove them out, move in. That has happened. I don't want to frighten anybody. That's such a tiny minority. It's not worth going into, really. But no, there are actual reptilians, all right? That's their race. They can shapeshift to look human. They might have trouble holding that shape over a prolonged period of time. And there have been some who have retreated from public life because of that, as they got older or became ill. But yeah, they shapeshift. Absolutely. To look human. It's not that they're humans starting to look reptilian. Their race is reptilian.
Yeah. Well, Ike's not the only one. Tolek, the Andromeda Council contactee, he has something on his website talking about how the reptilians being lower fourth dimension, they can willfully lower their consciousness down to a third dimensional reptilian, and after they do that, then they put the holographic mask of a human around them. But the thing about them lowering their consciousness to put a holographic mask around them, that's kind of a unique description of how it's done compared to the other people like David Icke and all, and the reptilians do shapeshift into humans and vice versa. Field. It's not. It can get that extreme. It's not just attaching to the chakras. So interesting thing that never gets old. But there are people that are say we shouldn't talk about this because we're just giving power by talking about them. No, I'm not. My intention is to talk
Oh,
about them,
no.
to expose them. And well,
Yeah,
actually, let's go to subject matter.
you're staying calm.
Yeah,
You're staying calm.
talking about these entities, it gives them power and thinking about them. Well, I say it's all based on your intent. If your intent's to
Yeah.
stop them and not talk about them to get publicity, then then you're not going to give them power by thinking about them and talking about them as we are. So, do you agree or disagree? Or am I right or wrong?
No, I think the thing we give power to is the thing that we lend our emotional energy to. So if someone, for instance, is very fearful about this virus, they're terrified, they're anxious, that is the thing that flattens the immune system the most. And I've been trying to move people out of fear and out of tension and worry and anxiety, whether it's about finances or health or any relationships or children in their lives or anything, family members, whether their job is going to survive, etc. I've been trying to move them out of fear because not only does that flatten your immune system, but it draws to you the thing that you're afraid of. So whatever you invest in heavily on an emotional level, you're drawing that in. So when you visualize something, friends, visualize the best. Visualize yourself slim and healthy. When you think of your body, never mind the self-criticism. Visualize yourself as having no challenges, whatever. Visualize a beautifully happy, healthy relationship with a wonderful soulmate in your life. Visualize any young people in the family doing beautifully, full of self-love and self-respect and self-esteem, and having kind, supportive friends and kind, supportive teachers, finding the right work or the right college or university if they're ready for that, if that's what their path is taking them to. Visualize the positive always. If you're going to get fearful, if you're going to, as I say, you're being objective. If you were talking about any race of dense, difficult ETs, and you're getting fearful or you're getting enraged, that engages them. Yeah, they love it. They will feed off of that. But you're being objective and calm about it, as am I. So we can discuss that. You can talk about the lower realms, and the problems of entities attaching to people. I would say don't do it a lot. Don't concentrate on it a lot. Don't give it a lot of focus, and don't give it any emotion. That's all. Yeah.
Sounds reasonable and fair. But another thing about being reasonable and fair, let's get back to the changing society and like resetting everything, new financial system and all that goes with it. Winston Shroud, he's going to jail for 10 years because he allegedly committed fraud and all. But interesting
I'm
thing here,
sorry, who are you talking about? What's the
Winston
name?
Shroud, you've heard about him, haven't you? Winston Shroud, name
I
ring a
don't
bell?
think so.
Oh,
No.
interesting. He was like the ultimate sovereign citizen guru, and now he's in jail for
Oh,
10 years. But
oh,
anyhow,
dear God.
um,
I'm sorry he's in jail. Gosh.
yes. Anyhow, the he once said in the talk he did about some sovereign citizen program called the One People's Public Trust, which is really no good. It will only get sovereign citizens thrown in the slammer. The one thing that they promised, among all the things that they tried to promise but they can't do, who died and made of God, was we'll make everybody multimillionaires and give everybody $1 million, all the money the banks have stolen. Well, first of all, that is not going to work in practice because if you know how commerce works, if everybody was a millionaire, the money wouldn't be worth anything. And second of all, Winston Shroud asked the question: if everybody becomes a millionaire, who's going to go to work the next day?
Okay.
That
I'm
raises the
glad you brought this up. All
okay.
right. With NESARA, price gouging will not be allowed. All right, people will receive funds to live on, but price gouging will not be allowed. And I don't think everyone's receiving the same amount. It depends on, like when your guides and mentors are working with you, these are higher dimensional people, and they will know what your intention is for humanity. And we just will not need garbage collectors anymore. We won't need the nurses and doctors as we know them now. We won't want to have the same kind of education in schools as we have now. We won't really need stores and shops so much anymore. Everything's going to work differently. So again, don't look at post NESARA life, all right, through the lens of third dimensional pre NESARA life, because nothing's going to make sense to you. People said to me, well, where's the money going to come from NESARA? Oh God, come out of the old system. There's plenty of gold on this planet. We want a new currency based on precious metals and precious jewels, whatever. We can do that. Money has been sat on. There's nothing but wealth on this planet, and we can use that, basing this new rainbow currency on the wealth we already have, without harming the earth, without mining her to bits, without stealing her blood, which is oil. There's free energy. For heaven's sake, Nikola Tesla came out with this in the 1890s. We don't need to harm the earth by pulling oil out of it anymore, let alone doing this nonsense with fracking. Everything's going to shift and change. So it just kind of cracks me up slightly when people try to look at this new world we're creating through the lens of the old one, because that just doesn't work. We won't need pilots or flight crew or people who run the airlines or the travel agencies anymore if we can teleport from a teleport pad to anywhere in the
Well,
world.
hold on. I got
And
to stop you right there because I can hear a lot of people, maybe on the right wing especially, who really don't like the idea of open borders. Well, I hear a lot of spiritual people say, "Hey, if we want to ascend, we got to close all our borders." Well, the whole okay, so this is another controversial issue that people can't agree to disagree on whether or not someone should even be called an illegal immigrant or whether or not people should be able to cross borders
okay,
without a vetting process.
look, listen, there will not be country borders whereby you need a passport to go into other countries. That will end. All violence, all shooting, all bombing, all war ended for all time. Okay? You go to my website, go to the NESARA page, you'll see a list of things that happened there. End of IRS, no more income tax. There'll be a flat tax, a sales tax of, I think it's 14%, so that if you're buying something that costs $800,000, then you clearly have the money to pay the tax on that. Nobody's going to tax your income. That's anti-democratic anyway. It shouldn't be happening in a quote unquote democracy, which we have never really been, but anyway. There's an end to all war, an end to and all armies, an end to the politics that we have known. No, all this stuff, quote unquote, immigration, no, all those old ideas gone, over. We will not have the problems then we have now. Will we need to switch over to new forms, new ways of thinking and get used to things? Of course we will. Of course, there'll be a time of transition. Of course, some people will find that difficult or hard to believe or hard to trust at first. That wouldn't surprise me at all. This is why I put out this information so people can start acclimating to it right now. And yeah, there's some resistance from people who don't want things to change, whether they're in places of power or not. But it's coming down the line, whether they like it or you like it or I like it or not. It's coming. And it's no more guns. We don't have to stand at the border or have a militia to guard our land. We don't own the earth. We don't own land. That's impossible. And what we did to the indigenous peoples of this the continent you and I are on right now, and what's been done to the indigenous peoples of every continent is beyond unthinkable and despicable, because they understood so much that we are regaining now and reclaiming for everyone. They understood you're a steward of the land. You don't own it. You know, they understood that families and communities are sacred, that nature is sacred, that healing comes with natural herbs, natural forms of healing. And from working, a shaman works crossing the dimensions and assists people in tapping into the miracles of nature, even able to affect weather in some ways with certain ceremony and thought forms, tonal frequencies. They understood so much. And the reason that the indigenous peoples were either wiped out for the most part, or maybe 2% saved and quote unquote converted, meaning forced into Western dominant culture, society and norms, social norms, is to turn them into slaves, to turn them into examples of what happens if you don't do as you're told. All of these ridiculous oppressive systems we've lived under are fading and are going away. And thankfully. And yes, it's a little scary. It's very strange. We wonder how it's going to happen. We wonder why it's when and why, in the big sense, why it's happening now. And there's just questions you and I aren't going to have the answers to for quite a while yet. And we're going to have to sit with that. We're going to have to sit in non-resistance to not knowing and not having total control. Again, the left brain hates that. The logical mind despises that. It has to be in control. It has to work with an equation that works out quite evenly and be able to name all of the elements of that equation, or it's restless, angry, and unhappy. And this is why we've got to come out of left brain dominance and this consistent worship of logical thought as if it were the only way to move through life, while intuition gets squashed and while true spirituality gets squashed and shoved to the side. So big changes that have to be made, absolutely. But we're doing it. We're already doing it.
Yes, and I don't really like giving dates. Every time someone gives dates, there's going to be egg in their face, it seems. But
Okay. Nope,
um, what
nope.
is it? You don't want to do that either.
There's no dates. If what the Ashtar commands say is if they gave a date, oh, this is going to happen by such and such in this year, that would shift the timeline because then people's thoughts would be focused on that. And that would be extreme high level interference and blocking of human free will. And they're not willing to do that. There is an actual prime directive that's not just something that came about from Star Trek and fiction on TV. It actually exists. And that is you don't interfere in the development of a culture anywhere in the universe except and unless they are attacked either psychically or under nuclear attack. And the psychic attack happened in 9/11. So that's why they've been as active as they have been in assisting us. They are allowed to step in under those circumstances.
Well, that's
Uh,
good, but
no
you
dates,
want
no news.
okay, fair enough. But you mentioned something that I definitely need to ask you about that I've asked about a lot before at one time. Now, not as often, but still, it does bother me though that how can some of these ET high level consciousness beings feel the urge to not intervene when natural law is being violated simply because they are following some unwritten law of the universe saying we can't interfere even if someone's life could be at stake. Just look at what happened to Sheldon Neidl of PAOweb.org with getting attacked by that direct energy weapon. And I can't help but he's been in the hospital for quite a while, and I can't help but ask the entities on the Galactic Federation of Light Council that he was contacting with, how can you guys not feel any bit of shame in yourselves, not stepping in to protect that guy who channels and gives your messages out to the world? You basically did the same thing that Spider-Man did when he let his that crook get away when the police asked for his help to stop him, and then he realized that was a mistake when that same crook later that night killed his own uncle. I mean, you're basically doing that, and yet these entities say, well, it doesn't matter. We have to follow some unwritten rule, and we can't, like, protect the whistleblower if the whistleblower says, please protect me when I blow the whistle so the powers that be don't kill me. It's not, there seems to be laws that say they can't do that. Well, what are those laws that say they can't intervene and save people who are trying to sacrifice everything to wake up humanity?
Well, that universal law is the one I just described, and it is called the Prime Directive, and it is non-intervention. No intervention in a civilization's progress and evolvement, except and unless in the case of nuclear or psychic attack. So the psychic attack happened with 9/11. That was a psychological attack as much as it was a physical one, and it was enacted by these dark hats, not just by some Muslim people somewhere. That was just a cover. It's a huge subject. It is a huge subject. I have many times called out to angelic beings and galactic beings and said, look, we can't do this anymore. This earth, this country that I live in, and this earth is falling apart. I don't know how much more damage earth can take, how much more toxicity and pollution and general madness, and how much more human beings can take. We put children in concentration camps in this country. We have utterly, more than once, we have utterly violated all forms of decency in terms of humanity on this earth, and still they say remain step back. And I think it's because you and I volunteered to come in to experience this extreme density, not because it's fun, not because it's fair or just, but because we wanted to know who we were in the context of this kind of horror, this kind of violence. And it doesn't last very long in Earth life when you consider how long humanity, or how long eternity stretches out for. And yet we have exponential growth on a soul level by being in this morass, in this madness, and realizing things we would not realize otherwise. It is a boot camp. It isn't fair. It isn't a good place to be, in my opinion. It isn't a place for children. It isn't a place for sensitive human beings. And yet, it's also a garden. And we have grown huge and beautiful and astounding new forms of flowers and trees in that garden. Beautiful, astounding works of art. Breakthrough moments of spiritual realization and understanding that might not have come to us otherwise. And it's our job while we're here to not take it so seriously as if what we are going through or what others are going through is the only thing that matters or the only thing that exists. They will get past the pain they're in, or when the time is right. They are following their path. I don't know why so many people have to suffer. I don't know why I had to suffer at times. I've somewhat worked it out, but not completely. I've had one health or relationship or family issue most of my life, or one or the other. And people, when they hear my full life story, is sort of like, how did you survive? And I just say, well, look, there's people who were in concentration camps now, or in World War II, or there's people who were burnt at the stake, weren't even witches. There's just had property that the church wanted to steal, in the 1500s or what have you, and that went on for several hundred years. The burnings or hangings of millions of mainly women, even some children and some men, and you can look at Earth and just say, what mind-blowing insanity, and we are known as the insane asylum of the universe. We are. For some reason, we wanted this experiment in duality, and boy, we got it. And from what I understand, the Ascended Masters feel that that experiment has gone too far. And this is one of the reasons we're receiving the help we are. If we don't receive their help, it won't be necessarily nuclear annihilation. I can guarantee you it won't be. But for instance, look at the Earth, at how the climate is changing to this extreme weather. And land masses are shifting. Some are appearing, some are disappearing underwater. And, you know, we can't leave things as they are. Even in 10 or 12 years' time, we might be at a point where things are pretty much unlivable on the planet. So we need help right now. We will receive that help, not only to clean up this earth, but to assist in healing humanity and our consciousness. And that is happening. It's coming forward more and more. We're ushering it in. You and I are anchoring the light required for that, but it's got to happen whereby the majority are reaching toward the light. It can't just, if somebody swoops in and saves us tomorrow morning, we'll worship them next, okay? When you worship somebody, you give all your power away to them. You give away not just your reasoning power, your mental, emotional power, your physical life, your etheric life. You give over everything to them as if you were not a created sovereign being, but just, you know, an object, basically, who doesn't deserve to live on his or her own. And that's not what this era we're moving into of Sat Yuga, this era, new era of peace and abundance. That's not what that means. That's not what that's about. It's about sovereignty. And you don't move into sovereignty by getting rescued. So this change we're enacting now, we're doing it. We're bringing about NESARA. There's a small group of very brave Congress people and a young state senator from Illinois called Barack Obama, who sat in a room and hammered out about 15 years ago or so, no, longer than that, 20 odd years ago, hammered out the stipulations and principles behind NESARA law. And they worked with Galactics to do it as well. And it was passed into law in October of 2000, I believe it was, by President Clinton before he left office, obviously, but it's never been fully enacted. It's never been fully voted on. It was agreed to by Congress because the Galactics didn't give them any choice. So they're doing what they can to assist us without coming in and completely taking over, all right? If they free this person and that, if they protect this person and that, they've got to do it for everybody. And then they own the planet. That's what that means. And they know we've had enough of ownership. So they're not going to do that, my friends. They're not going to do that to us. And I appreciate that. I do. From speaking on behalf of woundedness everywhere from the human race, I appreciate their respecting our desire for sovereignty. So that's what we're reaching toward now. We're not reaching toward being rescued from being tortured, from being owned and enslaved. We're standing up. And this is what I meant when he said, human race, get off your knees.
Well, that's very, very reassuring and good to hear. All right, now it's starting to make sense of the whole why they can't intervene and all. But there is one question about the nature of reality that one of the biggest questions of them all, about how people can go about what they do in this reality. And well, there's definitely karma, but I mean, the things that get allowed when it comes to allowing for free will, I mean, when free will violates natural law, I mean, the 15 beings that Andrew Bartzis, the Akashic Recorder, talked about, often saying they're the ones behind the Archon control system. In some radio show that he was on, the interviewer asked him, how can the source and the prime creators allow for these 15 beings to create such a diabolical thing like the Archon system where people can suffer? And Bartzis kept saying over and over again, it is a 100% free will universe. Okay, fair enough, but if you're using free will to violate natural law, common sense would say this cannot be allowed. Well, apparently not. So how does when can free will violate natural law? And
this is why, exactly, that's a good point. This is why NESARA exists. And this is why we're getting the help we need. And this is why these mass arrests are taking place, because these people have violated free will. You know, they have violated universal law. Absolutely, they have. It's just that I guess, you know, the time wasn't right for this to come forward before now, because human consciousness would have just taken it as, oh, thank God the gods have come down from the sky again. You know, if you watch ancient, whatever that program you just mentioned, I forget what it's called, where they talk about ancient astronauts and whatnot.
Ancient Aliens, yes, new episode about shapeshifters
If
and
you
stuff.
watch it, they point out how the indigenous peoples did consider very often that the astronauts were, from other places, other planets, were gods. They did deify. They deified angels. It's just where we were for millennia, but we're not there anymore so much. So now it is possible for them to step in, and it is possible for them to stop this abrogation of our um, free will by those who have just decided, oh, we're just going to do what we want with this planet. We're just going to use these minions. We reduce their DNA to 2-strand because then we can control them better. And they don't even really know that they're constantly entrained energetically to this vibration or that. We'll tell them if you're a good Christian or a good this or good that, you'll go to heaven when you die. And then they'll follow the rules because nobody wants to go to hell and burn forever. And Jordan Maxwell points out that a spirit can't feel heat, can't burn. And he brought that up in church one time and everyone turned and stared at him. But yeah, so it's slightly failed notion there, failed principle. But at any rate, it's just, yeah, I know it's crazy. I'm not going to argue with you on that. But I don't think we were there yet before now, that these violations would be stopped without it being a rescue operation. That's all I can say. Yeah.
All right. Oh, and I mentioned these 15 beings that Bart just referenced. He said they've been reduced to 6 because the other ones underwent service to self ascension. Now, since you seem so big on ascension, I can't help but wonder how can they possibly undergo service to self ascension when ascension is also is basically supposed to be all
Yeah.
about learning how to be service to others more than
Yeah,
service to self.
I would really vary from his reading on that front. There's no, you don't ascend to service to self. Service to self is always descension. No.
Well, apparently not, because if the Akashic records say it must be true, right?
If you believe in reading of the Akashic records, be very careful not to give your power over to this person or that, is all I would say. Be aware, just be really discerning with everybody you meet on the web, including me. That's all I would say.
That's a fair response, although I will acknowledge that I have said many times Andrew Bartis is my #1 source of info because I cannot think of a better way to get the definitive answer to a question than to access the Akashic records.
Oh, I can people who do better than that. Don't worry.
Okay.
They've been in ships, been in starships. But anyway, go ahead. I don't want to say anything against him because I don't know the gentleman, and I'm sure he's well intended. But I would just say, just be willing to take in other points of view time to time. I've had to switch around to different people at different times. I think we all do. That's all.
I do as well, and try to keep it impartial as well. So now. I see something, Beneficial Farm CSA on your website. We've only got about 7 minutes to go, but I want to bring this up because the whole idea of how the human body is going to have to go through, is going to have to diet. I mean, one could make the argument that if you really want to be of high-level consciousness, then one of the best things you can do is learn how to become a breatharian. And I hate to say this, but I'm starting to think my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who's been on her deathbed since 9 days ago and has had no food or water since because she can't swallow. It's kind of making me think that stroke that made her bedridden and unable to swallow kept her in this state for 9 days without food or water, and it's nothing short of a miracle that she's still alive. Could that stroke have turned her into a breatharian to live off water vapor and somehow nourish off nutrients in the air? It seems counterintuitive, but then again, there's a story about a lady who became more right brain dominant because of a stroke she had. So I don't know. I'm going to miss my grandmother.
You never know. You never know, do you? That's fascinating. 9 days with no food or water. We can go, I think, longer than most what we're mainly told in terms of no food or water. The body uses the resources that are there. But, if she's preparing to transition, which may be a possibility, I'm not saying that she is, she will be happy to come off of food and water because all her resources are going toward this transition and vibration. And maybe she feels a lot calmer. Earth water, if it's not structured, and earth food creates very often a disturbance in the body. I'm not saying people should stop eating. I'm not going to say that. I really think breatharianism is wonderful because you stop taking in the density of most of our modern food, vibrationally. So I would say, if you can switch to vegetarianism or veganism, I'm a vegetarian for the most part anyway. That's wonderful because what we do to animals on this planet, even the smaller organic factory farms, we've got to stop eating one another. In my opinion, if we're going to send, but people have to do what's right for them at the time that's right for them. But I think she's working with her vibration to lift it higher, which is really beautiful. There's a lot that goes on when people are bedridden and ill and aren't talking. There's a lot that goes on with them etherically that you and I don't see. We can't imagine, what processes they're going through. I can see her higher self and her spirit team all around her, her guides, her angels, and she's just talking to them quietly and talking to loved ones who are visiting from the other side. And yeah, she's just shifting vibrationally. So, I hope she doesn't look like she's suffering. It doesn't look to me, in my mind's eye, from what I can see. She looks pretty much peaceful.
Yeah, and well, you've heard stories, I'm sure, about when the spouse dies in a nursing home, the same spouse in the same nursing home dies soon after. Could that be a sign that the marriage is so bonded? And my maternal grandfather, he's actually still alive. He's 90, she's 89. He's in much better health than her, even though he does have slight high functioning dementia. I can't help but wonder if she dies, will he pass away a short time after as a sign that their marriage was so bonded? I hate to think it, but
Okay, I'm asking for input on that one.
not for my sake, but for anybody else who is in a similar boat and
Yeah,
wants to make sense of this phenomenon.
it's a sensitive issue. That's why I'm asking for input. Hang on, just one second. Yeah, there is a strong marriage bond, but he doesn't really want to go immediately that she goes. He wants to be around for a bit and experiment, quote unquote, in seeing what it's like to have his earth energy separate from hers and just to be single again. Not that he's looking to sort of go cruising around at age 90. It's not that, it's his individuality he's curious about. He's not yet cognizant, he's not fully understanding how he's going to feel when she's gone and that it will be hard for him to grasp that she's gone. So men aren't very good at that. So now I'm asking, might he depart soon after his wife? Maybe within a year to 18 months is what I'm hearing. Maybe sooner. Yeah. Well, he's not a young man, that can happen in any event. My own mother made it to 90. She took good care, but then she got cancer, and she didn't want to stick around. She was fine with moving on. I really love that. She was okay about it. She didn't resist. She was just sort of, very, very practical gal, my mother. But yeah, he's all right, really. He knows she's moving on, and he knows that he'll still be able to talk to her inwardly, and she'll hear him.
He knows she's moving on. Oh, well, it's funny. I mean, he seems to his short-term memory is the
Yes.
worst in the world. So it's like we only showed him his wife, my grandmother, on her deathbed once, and ever since then, we've kind of kept him out of her. He and her have actually been separated. It's been in different parts of the nursing home for like 2 years, I think, and he's only like seen her once since then. In fact, a few times he's actually asked, "Who is this woman?" when he saw her in
Yeah.
a picture with
Yeah.
her. That's so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned that,
Yeah,
and
I mean, it depends on where he is with the dementia, which has probably gotten a lot worse. But inwardly, he still feels that connection and still feels her presence. I can guarantee you. It's just, it can be very hard. It's the kind of thing almost you can't predict because people will just sort of, um, they'll be headed toward a situation with one vibration, and once they're actually in it, they shift to another vibration and another form of realization. Um, it's just going to have to flow. You're just going to have to flow with it. Yeah. It'll be all
well,
right.
interesting. You're pointing it out that even though a man may not be with his spouse in the same nursing home and not even know her when if he were to see her, recognize her, he can still sense her at a spiritual level. That's
Yes,
humans have that. That's
absolutely.
yeah, interesting. So well, we've reached the 2 hour mark, so I guess I'll give you the chance now to spend a minute or two getting out anything you like, your contact info, your site again, and any last sales pitches, any events, and then we'll close out.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's been really lovely to be here. And I would just close with saying to people, just try to relax more, try to get more sleep. All right, go to bed earlier if you can. Only watch what's uplifting. Move away from the news reports, okay? You can stay basically informed without sinking yourself into one news report after another because they'll be going crazy. They'll get more money out of their sponsors right now because more people are tuning in. So they will be going nuts with one breathless news report after another. Careful with the commentators. They're not all speaking from a place of honesty as far as how intense the illness will spread, how fully it will spread. Use your own intuition. Drink a lot of pure water and stay calm. Vitamin C, very important, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 IUs a day. You can get it as a powder, mix it in water like I do, eat as healthfully as you can, get outside and get some air. Step away from the devices whenever you can. And don't let people shock you with one awful rumor or prediction or another. You don't belong in fear and shock. You belong in calm and centered understanding of your own omniscience, your own beautiful co-creative self. All right. So again, I'm at Caroline, which is Caroline, Oceana, which is ocean with A at the end, Ryan.com. And if you want, just Google Caroline Oceana Ryan, and you'll see my website. And the abundance calls we do a second and fourth Wednesday of every month. Those are free and open to everyone. If you want to get on those calls, I can put you on the email list. Just go to the abundance call tab or abundance group tab on my website, and you'll get instructions there on where to email me to get on the reminder list. You'll get a reminder email with the call-in number and everyone. We do meditation visualization, and it's just I really uh, just one question or just the put out one.
Okay, you're breaking up really bad. You've been breaking up for 15 seconds, actually. I just didn't stop till now. You seem to still be breaking up. I don't know if they're really trying to jam your signal because they don't want you to hear you anymore because you've already given out a lot of significant stuff on my show. So if you can hear me, I don't know if you can, but anyhow, apparently not because the signal's broken. So